works for DNR, RAS, and is on the Deep Creek Watershed Administrative Council. As a DNR representative on the Garrett County Watersheds Administrative Council, Tom and his staff have researched the various funding possibilities for the Deep Creek Watershed. Tom's talk is entitled Future Funding for Deep Creek Watershed Management, Current State Funding Opportunities for Protecting and Restoring Deep Creek Lake's Waters. Tom?
All right, excellent. We are in the home stretch. I think this is like the second to last presentation, but thank you again for all sticking through, through this stage. Lots of great talks, and a lot of these things you'll see, everything kind of ties together. Earlier today, we talked about, we talked about the conditions of the lake, and then we heard all sorts of great talks about what actions have been done through this watershed management plan. And what are additional things that we could do? We just heard from Hannah about different ways for, looking at and possibly improving our septic or also the wastewater treatment plants. So, as always, it comes down to how do you fund these different pots? And it's there are options out there, and one of the things we're going to talk about today is kind of where we are in some of these funding options. Let me just put a kind of caveat here. First of all, yes, I work for DNR, and what I'm not endorsing any kind of grant request, or we are not endorsing any grant request, and we're not, leading any conversation on legislation. We're just trying to give you an idea of what's out there. So, okay, so this is gonna, Bruce covered this before. This is State Lakes. This is just kind of setting the stage. This was, oh sure, all right. I talked with my hands, so I gotta get myself room. All right, through the State Lakes Protection Restoration Fund. Bruce kind of talked about this before. This was, about started back in 2018, about $1 million per year. And these are the focus areas: removing sediment, treating contaminated sediment, preventing invasive species, and improving the ecological and recreational value of, our state lakes. And then state of Maryland, and all the dots on here are all the different state lakes in Maryland. You can see there's 4 of them on this, the 16 state lakes that are actually Garrett County, but Deep Creek is your first one in bold. So how was that money used for Deep Creek Lake? So there was, from this $1 million a year, a big chunk of the money went to lake shoreline stabilization cost shares, and that was $200K per year or more. Hydrilla control, as we've heard about earlier, through Christina. Creating and improving fish habitat, and then the Arrowhead Cove dredging project that Bruce mentioned earlier. So when you look at this chunk of money through this restoration fund, over half of it went to Deep Creek Lake. So in addition to some of these things, we already talked about the Arrowhead Cove dredging, using some of that funds. There's also an additional $220K for SAV harvesting test project. Christina talked about that. And then there's this $1 million, or roughly $1 million, for this kind of pilot project that was put into general funds. We have yet to kind of determine the scope, and everyone knows that the state is, we have a $3 billion budget deficit. So we're trying to address that. So this money that's coming in as general funds, one way or another, our intent is to get that much money for Deep Creek Lake, whether it's through this funding pot or whether it's through other funding sources. And that way it leaves it open for the different projects that have been super successful, like the shoreline erosion control or hydrilla removal. But we were trying to determine what this pilot project is going to be. We'll be working with Christina and her staff to see the results of their study. But one way or another, we're trying to get these funds. The intent of that, and as the legislation required, that's what we're going to try to do. So, all right. So now we're going to talk about kind of what else is out there. And what I'm going to show here is not this doesn't include general fund, or that doesn't include funding for typical salaries or ongoing restoration, protection, and monitoring programs. These are some of the different grant programs that are out there that would address a lot of these things that Molly spoke about, that Hannah spoke about, and other folks have talked about, that actions that could be used for additional needs for Deep Creek Lake. So here's a bunch of funding sources here. I'm not going to read through every single one of these, but I'll just give you a gist of the different things that are out there. You know, through DNR, there's programs that offset the cost of erosion, flooding, and other climate change impacts. There's a series of targeted funding opportunities, a database with over 200 state, federal, and nonprofit groups that deal with, you know, basically improving water quality. Lots of opportunities there. Hannah mentioned the Water Quality Revolving Loan Fund, and that's allows you to get low interest loans to improve wastewater treatment plants, failing septic systems, you know, urban stormwater control. So there's a funding pot out there. And when I went through these things, these are all ones that are accessible to this area over here. There's a lot of funding pots, but some of them are Chesapeake Bay related. These cover the you know, Garrett County and also the Deep Creek Lake watershed. There's also the Clean Water Act 319 funds. And again, these are to offset non-point source pollution. And then there's watershed assistance grants. And this is for developing, you know, watershed plans and funding for, you know, planning and also developing projects. Another page of these, there's also the Abandoned Mine Land Grant. And I know the Deep Creek Watershed Foundation has worked to fund Cherry Creek, the doser up there. So, but this money is available too. Les, this is off of your website up there from MDE. The Bay Trust, even though it says the Chesapeake Bay Trust, they do have funding that's available for this area of the state. And again, this can be things for improving water quality. There's education, but some of the grants are pretty sizable. There's conservation grants for farmers. These last three are for farmers, whether it's to help them offset the cost of these actions they put on their land to reduce polluted runoff, or whether it's to help them with soil erosion, improve water quality, and even providing for technical assistance. So there's funding pots out here. And this is not the total exhaustive list of funding sources, but these are some of the main state ones that would work for the Deep Creek Lake area. And there's also, this is a smaller one, the Mid-Atlantic Panel on Invasive Species. They do have some funding sources there. And I know, remember, one of the things that the State Lakes Fund was used for was hydrilla control. So that might be a possibility for that. And there's also non-state funding opportunities. I'm sure I know there's something called the Watershed, or the Foundation Center, and these websites have accumulated these giant databases of all sorts of different non-state funding opportunities. So those are definitely something to look towards. So kind of overall, you know, the state has provided and continues to provide, you know, resources to Deep Creek Lake, you know, to protect, restore, and, you know, and monitor its waters. You know, when the State Lakes Protection and Restoration Fund was running, it provided multiple year critical support that was super beneficial for Deep Creek Lake. You know, so there are state funding opportunities available. However, with, you know, the stressors on the federal government, then also on the state budget, some of these funds may be the availability may be a little bit more difficult to receive, but they are definitely out there. And then, you know, there's other opportunities out there. Like I said, looking through some of these Watershed Foundation, or these like the Watershed Center, that's an opportunity right there too. And then so there are opportunities out there. And the last thing I just want to say is again here, just because I'm showing these different opportunities does not mean that, you know, we're endorsing any project or we're going to start any discussion on legislation. But there are options out there. So I just wanted to do that, to pass that along to everyone. So thank you. Any questions?
Any questions for Tom? Question from
Oh.
the back.
Just a point, another good non-state source for funding opportunities would be the University of Maryland's Environment Finance Center.
Yes.
They can
yeah.
offer wonderful guidance, and they've helped a lot of different communities throughout the state.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, any other questions for Tom? Okay. well,
Excellent.
Let me just talk for a minute. I think it'll be fruitful.